This segment of the show is sponsored by our friends at Golf Pride. In golf, light grip pressure releases power. Golf Pride engineered a secret that pros know. A larger, lower hand encourages lighter pressure. Plus 4 technology is designed with 4 additional layers, which reduces tension in the lower hand to generate more power. Play Plus 4 and release the secret pros know. Now available on Tour Velvet, the winningest grip on tour. Grip confidence, grip Golf Pride. All right, folks, now back with me here on the French Lick Resort guest line is Larry Mowry. Let me remind you a little bit about Larry's background. He is from San Diego, California, turned pro in 1959. He won the 1968 Robo-Yell Open at Holston Hill Country Club up in Knoxville, Tennessee. He also won the 1969 Magnolia Classic. The Florida Open was another one of his victories. He won that tournament twice in 79 and 83, plus he also won the 1979 Colorado Open. He won 5 times on the Champions Tour, including the 1989 Senior PGA Championship by 1 stroke over Miller Barber and Al Geiberger. On the Champions Tour, he's got, 5 of those wins, so that's one thing, right? 5 big wins. He also had 7 runner-up finishes, 5 third-place finishes, 52 top 10s, and 104 top 25 finishes. And I'm very honored he is back with me again tonight here on Next on the Tee. Good evening, Larry. Thank you for coming back on the show.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I think I'll leave now after that introduction. While I'm ahead.
I appreciate you. So, Larry, I know you're local here now in Atlanta. Curious to get your thoughts. Did you get an opportunity to go out to East Lake and see any of the Tour Championship this past weekend?
No, I didn't. I really enjoy watching it on television, quite frankly. And plus, I'm 82 now, so it's wandering around that golf course is a little bit more than I can handle at this point, walking, So I'd rather watch it on TV and get to see what the guys are doing in that vein.
What about your thoughts about the Tour Championship? Sort of the format that they had, right? That sort of staggered leaderboard where Justin Thomas started out 10 under and on down it went. What did you think about how it got set up and how they decided who the Tour champion would be?
Yeah, I get, the players seem to be in favor of it. And if that's the case, that means that they felt that under the past format, the guy that worked all year long and was leading in the points didn't really have any edge. It was another tournament, but with that big prize money. It turned out all right somehow. You know what I mean? You got all the really good players right in there. So, somehow it all worked out fine.
Larry, I want to take you back a little bit, and I know you had an opportunity to play alongside some of the greatest legends in the history of the game, guys from the 70s, 80s, 90s. Was it ever intimidating for you to get paired with someone like a Jack Nicklaus, an Arnold Palmer, a Gary Player, some of those guys, maybe the first time that you found yourself on the pairing sheet next to one of their names? Was that ever intimidating to you?
Yeah, it was. I mean, Jack, in fact, it's funny when Jack first came out, before he won all the, before he won the U.S. Open, we were all kidding him and very relaxed around him. And suddenly he started winning, and we realized that he was like really extra special. And I choked every time I play with Jack. I mean, that's one of the things that I wish I could have changed in my career, but that it's just the way it turned out. I tightened up on every first heat, but he would look at you, and he was the friendliest guy in the world. I mean, he was perfectly friendly. And but he would look at you with those eyes, and like he could read your mind and maybe your soul. And it's like, whoa, you feel like you were in a ball game. When I remember when I played with Jack in the tournament, I can't remember if it was Portland or Seattle. I think it might have been Portland, and he won the tournament in Seattle. And I think it was in Portland where he got Joe Black, a tournament official then for the PGA Tour, or PGA of America really ran it. And he gave Jack a 2-shot penalty for slow play. I think that's the only one. Yeah, he nailed him real good. And the Jack started walking fast in between shots. Kind of something that DeChambeau is doing right now, the same thing. Try to make up for the time. Well, anyway, after all that time, and here Jack had won we were so casual talking to him and everything. And so now he'd won the Open. Here he'd just won Seattle, and now here he is with a 2-shot penalty and still in the lead at Portland. Anyway, so Butch Baird and I are paired with Jack the last round. And the first hole was like a really easy par 5. And they both knocked on the green about 18 feet from the pin. And I was just short, and I chipped up about 4 inches from the hole and tapped it in. And Jack asked me, he said, "Larry, who's out?" And I looked around here, and I didn't know how nervous I was at the time. And I said, "I think you're out." I mean, it sounded like somebody squeezed a rubber hose, an air hose talking through my throat. I thought, holy cow. So anyway, Jack got kind of a kick out of it, but he didn't say anything. As I was coming down to 9, I made some bogeys after that, and I made some birdies like 7 and 8. And he came over to me and put his arm on my shoulder and said, "I didn't want to say anything to you. I thought it might make you more nervous." He says, "But I see you made some birdies. You're okay now." And he's just a nice guy. But I was really intimidated. It's amazing. Palmer was one where when I played with Palmer a bunch, and he was. I had a good time playing with him. But there was one time when we played the last round of the Senior Open, and it was it's the U.S. Open, and it was in Connecticut, and we're paired the last round, and big crowds there, and Arnold was really going good during that time. So anyway, so we both hit our tee shots, and it was a long par 4 and uphill second shot, and the crowd cheered Arnold from the time he left the tee down the fairway, kept going and going and going. And I thought, wow, I've never seen this happen before. Anyway, so we got to, I hit my second shot short of the green. Arnold was up on the green, and the crowd was cheering. And it got to me. I got misty-eyed with it. And I looked down at my ball to try to chip, and I can't see the ball. So I had to ask the caddy. Meanwhile, Arnold's got his hands on his hips looking at me, wondering what in the world I'm doing. And so I pretended and wiped my face off, and I could finally see the ball. I chipped up and made par. And as we went on, every single tee, every single fairway, every single green, 18 holes of it, they cheered for that man the whole time, all the way around. And there was one hole. There was a kind of a condo on one side, and one of those fourplex condo unit things. And one had a banner, and it said Arnie's Army, go Arnie, and all that kind of stuff. And he called me over. He says, "Look at this. I want to show you something." He says, "See, that's a hand painted banner there. That isn't some factory thing or something that they did that in their kitchen." And he said, "That's really special." And he said, "Don't ever forget those people that do special things just to make you feel good, And that's the kind of guy that man was. I mean, he was unbelievable. Well, anyway, it was there that I shot 71 that round. I think Arnold shot 73. And I had to leave that tournament to go to Syracuse the next week, which meant I got to drive from Connecticut up to Syracuse, New York, and qualify the next morning. But I told my wife, and we were driving up, and I said, "Don't worry about me from here on in." I said, "I can handle it." That really just told me that I can play under the pressure. There's nothing going to bother me, and everything's fine.
And, Larry, I read a story that said that, and it might have been actually coming out of that very same tournament you were just talking about, how when you were paired with Mr. Palmer and seeing the way the fans reacted to him changed your opinion about how important the people that are there to watch you play. You changed your opinion about those folks. Do you remember that? Do you like what about that changed how you felt previously to what you witnessed with Mr. Palmer?
Well, when you're as a young player, I don't know if you really appreciate it all that much. You're worried about how you're doing and all that. But after I saw that, I just said, man, just enjoy those people out there on the sideline. Talk to them if you can. Smile to them. At least do that instead of frowning all day long, how serious you are. And it really did help my golf game after that. I loosened up and I would talk to them and just say things just to recognize that they're fact they're there. It did change the way I looked at it. In fact, I played a lot better from that point on. And Gary Player, you mentioned Gary. Gary was probably a guy that I could talk to better than, closer than most guys. I would always talk to him about how I wanted to play and I wanted to stay out there. It was hard to, during that period of time, that was a very hard tour to get on as kind of an outsider. They have rules now. If you won a tournament, blah, 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 you can go play. But back then, you had to finish, I think, I can't remember, something like 30th on the money list or something like that to be exempt. And that was very, very hard. So, and especially when you had to qualify every week. I never missed qualifying in that thing, not one time. And anyway, with Gary, I would always talk to Gary and say, I'm getting ready. Pretty soon I'm going to be able to beat you there, boss, and finally we got to the Crestar and I qualified. And don't you know, I'm playing with Gary the last round. We got to it's an interesting story because I got to the 15th hole. It was a par 5, and I hit my drive out of position. The green was kind of sideways, and it was a very narrow kind of green, and par 5 and water hazard. I had to go over a little water hazard, and probably if I missed the green and went over, I'd have no shot at all of making birdie coming back. I was just dead, So because there was humps there and everything. Anyway, so Gary laid up, and he had a one-shot lead on me at that particular time, and I thought to myself, I'm not going to do what he wants me to do, which is I'm going to go. He wants me to lay up right next to him, and we'll have a pitching contest. And he's one of the best guys with a 60-yard shot you're ever going to see in your life. I mean, he's brutal. So I thought, I can't win if I do that. The only way I can win is I took a 5-wood out. It's about, we're going by 1987 yardages, which are, it's grossly different than it is now. But I could hit a 5-wood about 235 in the air if I killed it, And I just hit a big old high 5-iron and said, well, if it goes to the length in the lake short, that's it. And I put it right in the middle of that green. And Gary didn't hit a good shot. He made par on that par 5. And I 2-putted for birdie. Now we're tied, and we tie 16, 17 on 18. I didn't hit a very good shot into the green. I had about a 35-footer for birdie, and Gary was about 20 feet. And don't you know, I knocked the 35-footer in. Boom, Gary misses. And so when we finished our round, we still had, I think, Miller Barber and Dale Douglas and Chi-Chi behind us. And my wife and I are kind of behind. The scores tent was right behind the green. And we're peeking around the thing. We didn't want to be obnoxious looking at guys. If one of them made a birdie, they would tie me. And Gary grabbed us both by the hand. He says, come on, let's go sit in the stands. There was some room there in the stands. And we sat down, and he said, let's watch these guys try to make a birdie and tie you. And anyway, so they missed. I won the tournament, and Gary congratulated us. And I thought then, now here's another guy who would look at people, and he's not afraid to, because of his great playing ability, to give someone else credit for doing something good. You know, that's a special guy there too. I found all the great players to be kind of really special individuals.
And just a side note to that, and you sort of, as you were telling the story, but it was the first time that a Monday qualifier on the Champions Tour would go on to win the tournament. So you were the first guy to do that. So that had to be a little extra special for you as well.
That was. They had crazy rules back, and then that got me in. But I mean, I didn't play. I went to high school and grade school and everything in Newport, Rhode Island, and they had the next tournament was up in Newport, Rhode Island. I mean, up the Newport Country Club. So I called and said, "Okay, I won the tournament. I head up to Newport." And they said, "No, you're not in the invitational. You won a tournament." Anyways.
Wow.
Yeah. So then the next week we're down in Atlanta, and I won it in Atlanta playing, as it turns out, with Palmer. Palmer had a 4-shot lead. Going into the last round, I was tied with Gary for second place. And I won that one. I shot 66 and won it. And so now I've won 2 tournaments. And I think there was like Las Vegas, and there's a tournament in Palm Springs, or it might have been some other tournament. Anyway, I didn't get in any of those with the
Wow.
2 wins, you know. But however, the next time out, the next year, I got to Vegas, and it really kind of burnt me that I didn't get invited to Vegas, because I'd lived there for about 4 or 5 years, and So in '88 I got out there to that. They couldn't keep me out because I was like, I think I finished 13th on the money list or something like that. So anyway, so I'm in all those tournaments now, the invitationals and everything else. So I won at Vegas, beating Bob Charles coming down the stretch, which that's people don't talk about him at this day and age, but that guy was some player. He was really good.
Larry, just a couple more before we let you go. And you're talking about all the opportunities you had to play with Mr. Palmer. I read a story that you and Mr. Palmer were paired together once out in Hawaii, and it started raining so hard it was actually coming down sideways. Do you remember that?
It was funny. We're going to this little hole. I mean, the rain was horrible. I mean, it was so bad you couldn't use an umbrella. I mean, there's no way. And the wind was blowing about 45 miles an hour, and we're playing this we're dead into the wind, dead into the rain on this hole that normally is a drive and a flip wedge. And so we scream our drives out there only went about 200 yards. And we're down there, and Arnold's going down the fairway with his driver above his head like that priest in the Caddyshack movie. So, we're gonna go. The guy was so funny. It was humble. I mean, there's nobody around to see it. That was just for the guys in our group. Just nobody would dare be. The people didn't have to be out there. Weren't out there.
I want to go back to playing other sports, and you also played baseball. And I read that the Boston Braves were actually interested in you as a pitcher at one point.
Yeah.
Talk about them romancing you, trying to get you to play baseball.
Well, I pitched an awful lot of no-hitters, and there was some guy would step back and he talked with the umpire, and he says, "Do you mind if I, borrow your mask and get behind? I want to see this," because he'd heard about me, and he came out to watch me in action. And I threw it really fast. I had like three grades of fastballs, and one of them that had what we call an in shoot, which is it would break it would break into a right-hander, and I had a knuckleball that was kind of my grip was so and so that I would throw a ball that was almost like a splitter, and it would just come up there and just dive down, and that's what he was interested in seeing me. He liked the fastball, but anyway, so after the game was over, he says, some of those balls broke 4 feet straight down, So I told him, he started picking me up. He called my mother, and he would pick me up, and we'd go on a bus to Boston, and I'd go watch the Braves play up there. It was, but what happened? No, that was when I was in junior high school. So I got into, I started playing golf about that time. I seriously started liking golf, and got to my freshman year of high school. And back in those days, if you were a freshman, you couldn't play on the varsity. So, I was playing a lot of baseball at that particular time, so I had to play on the freshman team, and they were terrible. And I was like, I probably wasn't. I'd have to say my final opinion is that I wasn't a team player type guy, and I'd get mad if a guy muffed a ball and stuff like that. So it's like when I weighed out baseball versus golf, I looked at golf and I said, if I screw up, it's my own fault. Nobody else is to blame. And I really got a lot of peace out of that, and I quit playing baseball my freshman year. It all happened. I had a no-hitter going into the last inning, and a little dribbler went down the third baseman and went between his legs, and they called it the scorer called it a hit. And I thought, well, and I was kind of spoiled. I wanted no-hitters all the time. But see, back then, you have to remember that back in those days, we're talking like early 50s, and baseball players didn't make much money at all. I mean, there was no, so it didn't enter my mind that there was anything special about it. And I talked about if I came out of high school and I'd have to play with some sort of farm team or something like that. And I just didn't like the whole idea of it. I was going to go to the University of Houston and play golf down there.
Larry, before I let you go, you're a wonderful instructor nowadays at Echelon Golf Club up in Alpharetta, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. Talk about the things you're doing there and how our listeners can, keep up with what you're doing on social media.
Well, social media has been very good. I've got a lot of nice friends up there. You're one of them, and it's. I have fun with it. You got Elkington and a bunch of guys on there. It really suits me to a T. On Echelon, I teach kind of on a part-time basis. At my age, I can't get out there all day long, and so I just do appointment only and limit the amount I teach per week. And I like to practice. To me, practicing is wonderful. I teach the short game. I honestly might have been the first one that, because I had the chipping yips. The reason I quit playing on the Champions Tour is I couldn't get it on the green from 5 feet off the green. It was terrible, and I figured a way to do this whole thing with just dead wrists. And I've figured out a stroke with it that will do good. And I've got things that I tell people. I tell them we got a kind of a machine-looking stroke. And I've convinced people to put it in their mind when they feel the nerves coming to go ahead and just say, let the machine do it. And it really does work. I teach a lot of power players. Even though I'm not able to hit it that long anymore, but I do know something about hitting it long. And but at this day and age right now, it's really fun because the equipment is, the equipment is perfect and it's beautiful.
Well, Larry, I can't thank you enough for coming back and be a part of the show. It's a huge thrill getting to spend some time with you. It was earlier this year. It is again tonight, and I hope you'll come back and join me again sometime real soon.
You got it, Chris. Thank you.
I appreciate you, Larry. All the best to you and your family.
Bye-bye now.
That's Larry Mowry, Mowry. You can follow him on Twitter. At 82 years old, he's very active on Twitter. He's at Larry_Mowry on Twitter. I highly encourage you to follow him and see all the things that he is posting out there on Twitter and on social media. He's a wonderful man, and I look forward to having him back on the show again real soon.